Okay, so yeah, I'm going to have two sessions, one on Windows and one on the language, but before the session, there's actually a smaller session which is kind of the status of the product and kind of tours on the roadmap, so kind of a bit of like the marketing. It's not really marketing, but more like broad overview out of my role as mentioned. I'm the product manager, one of the 3 product managers for RAD Studio, and specifically focused on Delphi, VCL, RTL, database, web stuff, and a bunch of other things. And just in case you wonder, the role of our product manager is to sit between marketing and sales on one side and R&D, I mean the software development on the other side. So kind of sitting between, getting like all of the hassle, but it's fun. So, and talking a lot with customers, which is good. So always available. I mean, send me emails. If I don't reply, it's just because it's getting too many, but it's fine. Generally, so what's here, and this is my email just in case. So again, we're going to go very fast through what's in the product today. Who has actually started using the 10.2 Tokyo version? Okay, that's quite some people. Who's on old versions? I mean, like let's say before Berlin. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so what's the product? This is kind of a standard presentation, so I'm going to go very fast, specifically on the first part. I guess you know what is that. This is more the marketing lingo. The fastest way to build cross-platform native apps, flexible cloud services, and road connectivity, whatever that means. It's a great tool. I use it for a lot of different things. I had a t-shirt yesterday. You can everything is possible with Delphi. That's actually quite fun. It was done by a conference in Germany. So Windows focus is big, and we'll get to. I mean, there's a full section on it, so we get plenty of the Windows-centric focus on the product. It's still at the heart of the product, but cross-platform is big, and you can't really ignore it. We're discussing over like yesterday and this morning and other times. I mean, as much as Windows 10 is considered successful, I mean, what's happening outside of the Windows world is staggering these days. I mean, the numbers are just unbelievable. I mean, Android just announced they got over the 2 billion active users. I mean, that's a number. There are quite a few things if we look around in terms of the shifts in the software development, the industry, and what's happening. That you can't really ignore mobile. You can really ignore like the new platform. You can really ignore even the cloud world. You can really ignore the IoT messiness and what's coming along there. So the way software interacts with everyday objects in the world, I mean, overall is very different from a couple of years ago, let alone like 20 years ago. It's not even conceivable what's happening today, who's making money making software compared to what it was in the old days. Again, I'm not going to cover that much because that would be really out of the technical space, but keep that in mind. So what are we doing and what's happening here? And I'll reiterate that when we get to the compilers. I mean, we are the most important evolution that and progress that the product is making is through embracing new platforms. I mean, we've gone from 1 platform to 5 operating systems over not so many years, actually, although I also had Linux in the past, that's another story. So we support Windows, Mac, iOS, Android, and Linux. Now, this is not easy, and given some of these are really moving targets, it's not easy at all, but we're really trying to make our best. I mean, at times we are slow, like piggybacking like on a new feature or a breaking change at the operating system level. For people coming from the Windows world, the fact that someone can break the operating system and just walk away is inconceivable. But hey, it is a different world. Operating system vendors break the operating system and they just don't care as long as their application keeps working. and Apple being like the #1 in that funny game. I mean, when in the world someone changed the file system in a point release? I mean, that makes no sense. I mean, iOS 10.3 changed the file system, and you know what? The file names are not binary compatible. They changed the UTF encoding of the file names. I mean, how crazy is that? They did it. Everyone's using the new operating system, and file system names are broken. Yeah, great, good job. Anyway, so what are we providing? I'm providing VCL, Windows development, and again, we'll have plenty of it, but also providing FireMonkey multi-device development with previews. You can still design and design your application, drop your components, and preview it live on the device. You drop a button, you see the button, how it looks on your iPhone, on your Android, which is still a closer cycle than what Xamarin is touting as their big new thing. We do support a lot of cloud services. Of course, we support like classic databases. That's kind of bread and butter. But we support a lot of cloud services. We support a lot of the new world data sharing and data hosting models. IoT, there's a lot of stuff I could say, but I'm not going to say. So it's okay. There is IoT, there is beacons. Beacon fencing is kind of a unique technology. We are the only one proposing these days. A bunch of interesting stuff there that I'm not going to talk about. The Delphi language is a full session, so okay, let's get there. The only thing I want to mention is we enable the standalone compilers to be large memory aware. That was not the case in Berlin. And the thing is that we have one customer, which is, as far as we know, the person with the largest project. They have 37 million lines of code. And you know what? They compile it into one executable. So it's not like a bunch of different, software pieces working together in one executable. And they had trouble. They had to go to packages because our compilers won't handle it in memory. So when we released Berlin, they were able to compile from the IDE, but not from the command line. So their continuous integration stuff was not working because they couldn't. Now they can compile from the command line and from the IDE, so they're happy.
How long does it take to compile 37 million lines of code?
I don't know. I haven't asked them. I don't think that much. I think they're not using too many generics, so it probably helps a bit. But no, it's not like a huge. It takes time. I'm not saying that, but it's. It doesn't take as much as compiling our software, but we have more than 37 million lines of code. But it's not that one executable, it's like a million. It's a million things, whatever. So what's new? I'm not going to go over, you can get like the full version of the what's new videos, everything. I'm just touching on a few things here and there. We improved the menu structure a bit. That's one small thing in like improving the IDE. You keep seeing small things, and hopefully also a couple of big ones. But we definitely want to improve the IDE a bit, and that was one way, because the menu wouldn't fit on some screens, so it's kind of annoying. Now we make the menu fit, but we made the dialog box bigger so the dialogs don't fit. Okay, well, one thing at a time. We fix one, we break one. That's software development. This is actually very nice if you have Berlin or Tokyo and you haven't played with it. Try using it, right-click everywhere on your board. I love a number of new menus, a lot of new menus. Add a new control, add an item, initial design. There's really a lot of features that are available, right-clicking and like connecting data-aware controls to the data source, the data source to the data set. If it's like a TBA, it's connect to the field, like right-click data source, right-click field, without having to go for the properties. Or right-click, and that's this general designer where you can type in the component name, the caption, if there is a caption, and do the alignment with one single, very simple to use new designer. So the point here is making the visual design even faster. I mean, not it's slow, but you can make it even faster, but simplifying the most common operations. The installer, if you've used any of the recent versions, you've seen the installer is slightly different. And the installer is getting faster and faster. We've introduced parallel downloads, so a single file is downloaded in parallel in 2 separate chunks, and that can really speed up the installation. I mean, we have customers that are doing full installation in less than 30 minutes. It used to be 3-4 hours, so it's quite a difference. The other thing, the other advantage of this model is that you don't really need to think, okay, what I'm going to use. I mean, just install everything in case. You don't need to do that. Just pick what you need, and then every time from the IDE you can, hey, install platforms, add iOS, add Android, add something. I mean, it's really one click away. So just install what's needed and then go for the simplest thing and the fastest thing and get started. Actually, I mean, I don't know if you're aware of that, you can even start it if you don't install anything. After the first 2 minutes installation, you do have the IDE. Just, there's no compiler. It's not terribly useful, but technically you have the IDE and the editor, meaning that in those first, initial, 1 minute, small install. So anyway, Windows Store support, we'll see plenty of it. To me, this is a critical feature. It's a critical direction for the Windows world, and we get to the why in a little bit. We've been the first IDE to support the desktop bridge. Actually, I'm not even sure Windows Studio has it now. They have support for Store, but through the native UWP. So it's good to know Linux is the big thing in 10.2 and focus on servers. Officially support a couple of distributions, but it does work on most distributions. So though there are hiccups here and there with some of the libraries. The focus was on server-side technology. That you can read that long list. I don't need to. And you can create Apache modules. You can create data snap servers, RAD servers, RAD server modules. You can create web broker applications standalone using third-party libraries. A bunch of libraries have been ported to Linux. Compiler is LVM based, and we'll get to the compiler. So that's one of the topics this afternoon. Arc enabled. You need a Linux box to import the SDK. Some of the headers are built from the physical machine, but not for compiling. You can actually compile on the Windows platform. That's a big difference compared to some of the other cross-compilation tools that they need the platform for compiling. I mean, for us, the Delphi compiler is a Windows application running on Windows. And then it spits out like a Linux, iOS, Android, basically. But it's smoothly integrated, so you just have to use this small utility running on your Linux box, be a server, and then you can just deploy the application, including all of the additional files and things that you need. Get it running, debug remotely, and everything works fairly smoothly. So the experience is really an integrated experience. We did a few things on FireDuck. Actually, I'm surprised. It looks like a lot of Delphi developers are picking up MariaDB as the database of choice, which is MySQL without Oracle. Oracle meaning the company, not the database. So it's interesting. That's actually growing fairly fast. And we added a bunch of things to FDMM table. You can right-click on FDMM table, show and edit the data in the table, automatically without writing anything. So if you need data, sample data to test your app, you just right-click, create it on the fly in the designer without having to run the application. You can enter data, see the data, play with it. I think it's actually quite handy. RTL change, some of these are nice, but I don't have enough time to get to those. The blob fields and the big grid, that's a change from Delphi. It's been a request from Delphi 1. we've changed it, fix it. When I see blob, I mean, you can say, okay, let's should be sure the beginning of your text, large text, and then Interface is not into the product because it was released like a week after, but actually technically you have a license for the developer version of Interface in 10.2. It is there, it's coming, it's actually a pretty nice, small, low-cost database. We did a ton of change on Android, mostly around the multi-threading model because we integrated I mean, it used to be that there was a thread, I mean, the Java UI thread and the Delphi UI thread that were separate. That prevents you from creating native control. So we merged the threads. However, by doing that, we messed up a bit, so it's not very stable at this point. The recommendation is still, I mean, use Berlin for Android development. For everything else, move to Tokyo. But if you're doing Android, just stick with the previous version. It's more stable. We'll fix it. I mean, we're actually working on the fix, but as soon as it's ready, we'll get it out. I did one feature of iOS, which I don't even believe it makes any sense. But it's fine. I mean, yeah, you can merge in the toolbar with the system bar, whatever that means. RAD server, if you haven't seen, and I'm not going to spend much time on it, is a backend. It's a REST API. It's a server that will host your REST API modules. Makes it very easy, very simple to create a web service for your Delphi or non-Delphi clients. I mean, you can use it from web clients, like there are companies using AngularJS on top of a RAD server. The point is really to make it as simple as possible, as smooth as possible to build a service. And for this reason, it already embeds a ton of features. There is user management, grouping, and now even multi-tenancy, so multiple companies with separate stacks. There is API analytics, location, push notifications for mobile. I mean, there's a lot of stuff built in. So rather than having to start from scratch and create everything, you get, I mean, a bunch of built-in blocks. As to go, you get a developer license is included and free. Then there is a deployment cost for RAD server, but this might be less than you're expecting because we dropped the price quite a bit. So, okay, I'm not spending too much time here. So 2 seconds on what's coming along. That's what's in today or kind of in the past. Well, you might have seen this because we published last week. Actually, yesterday we published another blog post, which is worth looking into, which is PM's additional comments on the roadmap. The roadmap was a bit short in the description, so we added some more information around the same items. So it's worth looking at the roadmap, worth reading the blog post. And if I have time today, I'll blog and link to all of those things. So what are we planning? I mean, the first big thing we're planning is finishing Linux, and the C++ side of it is still missing. So that's kind of the big thing coming along in 10.2.1. The last point being different, meaning it's DCU compatible. It's just an update. When we're breaking release, we're changing the major number, which is the second one. 10 is just, we're going to stick on 10 for foreseeable future. That's the plan. Because that's just like what Apple is doing. I mean, Mac OS 10 has been around for, I don't know, honestly, 12 years now, 10 years now. And Windows 10 is going to be around for 10 years. The thing with Microsoft, they're not even using the numbers, which, I mean, and their naming convention. I mean, I think we have bad naming conventions, but I think Microsoft is really trying to get the worst names. I mean, I don't know if you've heard. I mean, they did anniversary update, which means anniversary meaning is 1 year after. Then they had creators update, and then the fall creators update. I mean, is creators falling, or it's like the time of the year, and it's like whatever. I mean, I don't know. I mean, how bad, how worse can they go? I mean, the fall creators update every year, whatever. And you don't have a number, so you have to go. Oh, but that's build like 1, 3, 4, 5. Oh, sure. I mean, crazy, but whatever. So yeah, we're going to do a lot of extra stuff on the Delphi Linux side, including a ton of fixes. There are some memory leaks that are kind of a bit embarrassing. We are trying for the 5th time to fix the VCL high DPI. Hopefully, every time we do like one step, it's not there, but trying another round. Going forward, there is a lot of focus on Android. And we started, although with mixed results, to go towards having the ability to have native controls. I mean, native controls. I mean, we started FireMonkey saying, hey, let's paint everything, and it really looks the same, and it does. But the problem is, it looks the same, it doesn't behave the same. So if you want them to behave the same, and with like Android, you have to support like 8 versions of the operating system because people are using very old ones. You really need to piggyback on the local. Like having an edit done right on Android is like really impossible. So you have to use the native one. And so that's what we're aiming towards. And we did it on Windows, we did it on iOS, Android, and eventually we'll do it also on the Mac. That will be nice. We're trying to improve the IDE with a dark theme. We have a bunch of additional VCL controls, so we're not forgetting VCL. And then going forward, like towards next year, there are the 2 big things, specifically on the Delphi camp, going to be language enhancements, and we'll mention those later, and 64-bit macOS platform support. So those are kind of the things that are in the works, they are planned, but we also have lots of internal discussion for now, nothing like being developed. Actually, not even true, we have stuff developed. We're considering other platforms and other technologies. Among the platforms, the other ARM platforms, the like embedded ARM platforms, both Raspberry and Windows. Although it's tricky because it's a nice platform to support, but it's hard to make any real money out of it, so it's kind of a bit jiggly. But they're trying some creative ways to get those out. And on in the other area, we're getting a lot of requests for Linux GUI, although I'm still puzzled because like no one is using Linux on the client side. So, but there are some relatively important cases. But again, there's a partner that's doing it, so okay. I mean, if we have to do it, or it's good enough that a partner does it. That's kind of the point. Yeah, there are a bunch of other things, and again, if you get the full roadmap, there is even more stuff that's listed there. So that's kind of the short roundup of where the product is. And I guess we can take a few questions, although I have my other session to go through. But go ahead.
Anyone had the idea of making the IDE to FMX?
Oh yeah, we have that idea quite often, but then we look at it and say, we really want to do it? It would make a lot of sense.
Then you could put it on Android.
I think we'll put it on the Mac for us, but or on Linux. Put it on Linux. We don't even support the Linux client. No, I mean, it's. I mean, there are 2 things that are relevant there. One is this dog feeding. I mean, use the technologies you want. I mean, by using the VCL in the IDE, I mean, we kind of experience what's good, what's bad. So it helps a lot. I mean, improving the technology if you're using it effectively. So that's one big reason. The other big reason is to take the IDE outside of Windows, because like not everyone is using Windows these days. In fact, I'm using Mac. So that's certainly a relevant point, and well, Microsoft is doing it, and blah blah blah. The problem though is, let me put it this way: we have 2 options. One is taking the IDE to another major. I mean, making the IDE open and cross-platform. That's like a 2 years, 3 years project. And I mean, in 3 years, we're not delivering anything else than this. or we keep like building technologies for you to use. And honestly, I think we should keep building technologies for you to use. Because I mean, that means like taking the compilers to another platform, taking everything to another platform. Now we can say, hey, the compilers stay on Windows, but then, okay, it's not ideal. So you can take the editor to another platform, that would be easier, but still, it's a challenge. So we are considering options, including plugging into existing open editors and open IDEs, which is not a bad idea after all. But the idea of redoing the entire IDE is challenging. I mean, we're even having a hard time removing like .NET parts in part of the IDE, removing the C language, not even C++ code within the IDE and moving to C++. So we did achieve a great success in Berlin, where we removed the .NET Java stuff, the J# code from the IDE. Now it's J# free IDE, but there is C# to some extent. So yeah, it makes it tricky. I mean, we're using at least like 4 or 5 different languages and tools to build the IDE. So it's not a trivial task. I mean, was it all Delphi code would be much easier to move it over. So. But again, I mean, David Millington is like pushing, we should do like this plan is really, I mean, the champion of moving it and making cloud platform. And he's right, I mean, that would make a lot of sense, but it's a huge investment. So has to be balanced against something else. I mean, we can do both this and the rest. Yep.
Has there been consideration of customized personalities, considering the installation just allows the installation of an IDE?
Yeah, it is something we've been, I mean, we do have a mechanism internally, you can plug in personalities into the IDE, however, it's not documented, it's not that robust. So the documentation and making it really work would be not non-trivial, but that's something that is being considered. Like extending, cleaning all of the tools API, add the personality model and other stuff. But it's not easy. There's a question here.
You sort of have answered what I was going to ask, but what are the dependencies that are stopping you moving the stuff to FMX or Linux?
I mean, FMX on Linux?
No. If you want to move the IDE across,
sure.
What are the dependencies? Just tell us what they are.
The editor.
Plenty of evidence out there.
The
there API calls that you use in Windows that, for instance, aren't there in other platforms and you have to then start inventing stuff? Or is it just the example you gave, like there's a bit of C code here, there's a bit of J code there, there's a bit of...
I mean, the thing is that we have a lot of legacy old code that works pretty nicely, and it's one of the things you really want to touch it, because, I mean, you have to redo it from scratch. I mean, and redoing I mean, you say, well, there are like 1 million open source editors. Well, no, wait. I mean, let's see what they do, what they don't do compared to what they do. It's tricky. So some of these projects, but even the compiler, I mean, taking the compiler to a new platform is not a trivial task. The compiler is pretty much low-level code.
But you said it's all assembly language anyway, so we can take it across.
We have assembly language in the project, yeah. The assembly language will not work. Let me say, it's moving from Intel to Intel. No, depending on the platform, you have to change your assembly code. It's not the same. Like, because it's like uses different, even if it's Intel, I mean, for example, Windows to Linux, longs are different, or the position-independent code logic is different. So the physical code is significantly different, even if the same CPU architecture. I mean, I'm not going to ARM, which is another kind of work. So again, everything is doable, but it will cost a lot of money and effort, and the question is that the most important thing we should do? And my personal answer is no. So the plan is every release to like do one small step. Now at this speed it will take quite some time to get there, but we are inching closer. I mean, again, removing some of the dependencies was like one small step, but we've done many others. Like going large memory address, meaning we're closer to moving to 64-bit, which is, I mean, the first simple, the easiest thing would be to move everything to 64-bit, which we have done. We haven't done so far. But honestly, I mean, I've checked, last time I checked, no other IDEs really got 64-bit. Visual Studio is 32-bit square still, and all of the compilers are as well. So it's not like we're not in a totally different position than Microsoft. Microsoft has a little more resources than we do. Yes?
This was a 10.2 sort of update. Was there any thought in when you redesigned the menus for actually advertising the items within each block? Because I like that it's shorter and they spring out, whatever, but it's still hard to find something when it does spring out. It starts.
Well, the thing was to try to logically group things, but of course, everyone's logic is slightly different than another person's logic. So
I like the logic and the blocking, but then a group comes up and you've still got to read through the whole group to find what you're looking for, because within that block, it's still just kind of random.
True. That's a good point. I'll bring it up to the person who designed it. But the other thing is that, do you really need to just type in the small thing and it'll get you the menu item? If you know the menu item name, just type something and you get there. That's faster than searching through the ID. I even forget how easy it is to type and search. I mean, we have a search throughout the ID that's pretty impressive, and we don't use it enough, so that's kind of fun. One question there,
we share an office with a bunch of young web mobile guys. They've never heard of Delphi, other than the fact that I mentioned that it exists, and it's a total mystery to them. I'm wondering how Delphi is cutting it in the mobile market space market. What sort of uptake are we achieving?
Not a huge uptake, to be honest. But I'm not sure if we have really tried to have that. So there isn't too much we can do. Again, we don't have like the marketing budget some of our competitors, let alone like the platform vendors have. However, there are things we can do, and there are things we are doing. I think the first great step was to take the Delphi Starter edition and make it free to everyone. It's not a lot of money itself, but in terms of the concept, it's quite staggering. So you now can go to one of these guys and say, hey, download this and try it. It's there. You just drop your components and see what happens, see what's the development model. That's free to use and free to build applications and even give them out. So I know it's not the only thing we can do, but that's one thing we could do. It's cheaper than doing like a huge marketing campaign, and we did it. It wasn't easy. It's been asking for like 10 years and how it's happened, or getting it for free to schools and universities and students alongside. So some of these things that are doable are happening, and we're trying to do more and raise awareness, do some targeted marketing campaign. But from that to becoming mainstream, there's quite a step, and so it's not trivial. I think the company is doing more and has plans to do more in that respect instead of broadening up. The number of people who downloaded and installed, not just downloaded, installed and registered the free starter edition is large. It's very large, way more than we would have expected.
Not talking 2 billion.
No, not talking to billions, but we're talking to some pretty good numbers. There are more people on Starter than there are on the regular edition. So like if you double your user base, even if half of it is for free, so you're not making the money, but you're doubling your audience. So wow, that's the kind of numbers we are seeing. And on C++, it's even better than that. So the number of downloads has been really, really large.
But you have a marketing problem, and it's easy to see. Android Studio is a wonderful piece of software. It's free. Everyone uses it, and you've got something that's $5,000 or $7,000, and why would someone who has no money want to move over to something expensive? You have to virtually give maybe just the Android part away to compete with them, because really you're like a soldier going up against a tank. You're going to get squashed.
Sure. No, I mean, it could be a very long discussion on the market and the business. Of course, we are competing with companies that are giving away the tools for free because they make money elsewhere. But I think your idea of making an Android version free is a fairly good idea that we are considering. Let's put it that way. Yeah, it's a good idea. And something we have to do, honestly. So we'll try to do it. Last question, then I'll be around, but go ahead.
I didn't see UWP on your roadmap unless I missed it. Is that planned at some stage?
Well, yes and no. We get to that in the next session. So we can get the answer at the end of the session. So let me move into that, because otherwise I'm going to be, so how much time? Oh, that's still happening. Yeah, very good. So, okay, PowerPoint file. Reset, then let's Windows. And start this one. Let's see how I'm doing here. Okay, pretty good. Okay, so the focus of this session is, in general, it's covering what's happening in the Windows space and how VCL, and again, not because you can do these things in FireMonkey, but let's focus on the VCL for this session. How VCL can help you not just support Windows, but support today's flavor of Windows, which is slightly different proposition. And honestly, this is the summary of the session, VCL helps you support the latest version of Windows better than anything else on the market. That's kind of the idea. Well, we'll get to the why and how. So this is kind of the topics we're going to go through. Going to touch on the APIs and what's UWP and related things. Covered some of the VCL core. What we have been doing in terms of enhancing the VCL. The VCL has remained stable for many years. And then last year we started adding new components and going back to improving and so renewing the focus on the VCL. WinRT is a critical API for the new world of Windows, and I actually have a demo that I showed for the first time yesterday. I have been many around. It's a demo that shows you how to write code that talks to WinRT directly without going through components. And then the Dexter bridge, which is kind of critical in this critical part of this architecture. And I have the demo working today, compared to yesterday. Okay, well, you can agree or not, but that's kind of the point of the entire session. So let me get back. I mean, Windows 10 is growing fast. That's Microsoft saying it. They keep saying numbers. How many devices? They don't say computers. They say devices because they include the phones. But of course, no one is using a Microsoft phone. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the impression I have, they're really giving up on the phones. I mean, they've got below 0.5% of the market share. But they're introducing something new, which I'm confused. Anyway, Windows 10 desktop is growing a lot. And I guess the new WannaCry thing is going to help them get more people over for the good or the bad. And it's a good. Honestly, it's not a bad version. I mean, I don't like the fact they're shuffling in new stuff, hidden and whatever. But I mean, pushing updates that are new releases, a bit behind the scenes. But still, it's a new version. I mean, from the technical level. I mean, enhancement. I mean, even the task manager works for the first time ever in a decent way. I mean, no, actually, Windows 7 started getting it right. So it's not a bad version to use. Now, let's start with the difficult questions. Which is the API you use for program Windows 10? And the answer is, it depends. Because there are actually at least 3 APIs that you can use. You can use the good old Windows API, and this 30-bit or 64-bit flavors doesn't really make a big difference. Actually, on top of the core API, there is a huge COM layer, which is not on top, it's on the side of it. So there are things that you can only do through COM integration, like all of the shell management is through COM. And there is the WinRT API, which is the new world API, it's the API that was introduced in Windows 8 and is now at the heart of Windows 10. Now, the WinRT API sits, it's a separate a separate stack compared to Win32. They're not mapped to each other. However, there are distinct features that are available only on one side or the other. So you can do a pure Win32 application, you can do a pure UWP application, but at times you might have to merge the two technologies. Specifically if you have existing code to migrate over, because you want to be ready to rewrite everything. So you want to keep some of the existing Win API. There's also .NET. .NET plays in between, because you can use the .NET layer on top of WinAPI, you can use a .NET layer on top of WinRT, and you can mix and match, you can mess up things, and whatever. Now, on top of .NET, there are other frameworks that are mostly UI frameworks that are kind of almost largely abandoned these days. So whatever, it's been fairly complex. But one key thing is that, the VCL is, if you look at all of this, if you look for example specifically to the UI frameworks, but also data access frameworks and others, the only thing that's really been stable over all of these years is the VCL. Because if you look at the Windows side, they kept changing UI frameworks every few years. You cannot take maybe if you're using Microsoft Foundation classes in Visual C++, you can get close to it. That's the only case you can take something that was written 20 years old and recompile it natively and integrate it into Windows 10 as a first-class citizen. So that's not anyway. So what is Universal Windows Platform? That's tricky because Microsoft hasn't got a clear idea. So the concept, of course, there is a marketing side of it. Universal meaning, it's universal, runs everywhere. Wow, no, it's Windows Universal or Microsoft Universal, runs everywhere you have a Windows operating system, which used to be the majority of the systems. It's not these days because of the 2 billion Android and the iOS and the Mac and everything else. So touting that as universal is a bit overreaching. Being Microsoft hasn't got a universal operating system, has got a fraction, 20% of the operating system market these days. So years ago it was 90%, slightly more universal. But still, it's better than Apple universal binaries. I don't know if you follow that, funny things, but Apple universal binaries work across iOS devices, so across iPhones, not even the Mac. So they're as universal as one single piece of hardware in different flavors, because they contain a 32-bit and a 64-bit executable. And they're a fairly good scan for wasting people's hard drives, so they have pushed to buy a new iPhone. Oh, this iPhone got full. Yeah, because your application got 2 images in it. Yeah, whatever. Then they fixed it later, but whatever. Anyway. So yeah, this term universe has been a little overloaded in terms of what it means. But a FireMac application is way more universal than a universal application, but that's separate discussion. So the problem is, okay, what does Universal Windows Platform application mean? And it's it's hard to be really precise because originally, at the very beginning, this was a name on top of WinRT applications. And WinRT applications has to be built with specific technologies, mostly coming from Microsoft, because universal applications can use JavaScript, so that's kind of open-ended. You can use Cordova, a bunch of open source stacks. They can be .NET applications, so they tend to come from Microsoft tooling, or they can use Visual C++, not C++ as a general programming language, but Visual C++ as a specific tool with specific linker bindings. Because only the Visual C++ RTL is legally allowed to run within WinRT apps. Anyone else, C++ RTL is not allowed on security grounds. Okay, well, I have a point, but still, it's kind of a moot point. However, so that was like the very beginning, Windows 8, Universal Windows App. Then Microsoft realized, well, let's put it this way. Microsoft thought, okay, this is the new way, you have to build this app. These apps can go to the Windows Store, and we're all happy. The problem is that Windows 8 came out, well, people didn't adopt it much, but that's another side of the equation. And the store got some rubbish, but very few apps. And the developers were not starting building those apps, so Microsoft got into a bit into panic mode. Okay, no one's doing Universal Windows app. What we can do? Oh, let's let developers take their existing apps and put a coat of paint on them and say, hey, there's universal apps. That's where Microsoft started the bridges. They created 4 bridges and they killed 2, whatever, it's crazy. So the idea is, okay, let's take existing applications that have a point and turn them into Universal Windows app and make those available on the store. And this is what we're going to actually show and do, because that's what you can do with Delphi, VCL or FireMonkey application these days. You can turn, magically convert, I will get to some of the details, an application into an Apex, into a Universal Windows app, put this on the store, sell on the store, distribute through the store. And so that's formally and officially a Universal Windows app, although it's not technically universal, whatever. I mean, it's not a WinRT compiled application. And to answer the question, that's more or less where we are and what our current thinking. We are exploring the technology for building a UWP app, I mean, at the core level, WinRT application. But that's fairly tricky because it's not an open technology enough for us to really jump into it. So it's something we're looking into, it's something relevant, but Microsoft is really pushing the Windows Store model, including the bridge, a lot these days. So that gives some interesting opening and position for the Delphi. But again, we'll get back to this when we discuss the store. Okay, so that's kind of where we are, and I know it's a bit tricky, but so this is kind of some timeline. So 95, VCL was on top of Win32, and Windows, WinNT, Windows 95 type of framework. Then came on .NET, that was kind of in parallel. And then from Windows 8 onwards, we have also the WinRT layer. And they kind of took, none of the interconnections are actually correct. So let's get back to the VCL. The best component library for Windows. I mean, the others are kind of in trouble at times. The COM integration is absolutely, I mean, by all means, is the best COM integration out there. If you look at C++, C#, and other COM integrations, the VCL COM integration is really smooth. And now somehow we did it again. I mean, our WinRT API integration is really smooth. I mean, the code you have to write, and again, I'm going to show you this to you. The code you have to write to interact with WinRT object is a fraction of the code you need in either C++ or C#. So it's really smooth to interact with WinRT objects at the low level, which is quite fun. So again, today you can write a VCL application, integrate COM objects like shell objects and a bunch of other things, integrate WinRT objects and WinRT APIs in a pretty open-ended fashion. Now, of course, if you're using WinRT API, your application will run only on Windows 10. If you're not using the WinRT API, your application will run on any flavor of Windows. That's your decision. Okay, so before we get to the WinRT integration, I really want to spend a minute, because it's kind of been a bit overlooked, of how you make your application look, how you turn an application into a Windows 10 application. In terms of, yes, it works, but it looks old. No, let's make it work and look okay-ish by today's standard. So there are a few things that we've done in terms of helping get a proper, modern-looking application. One is styling, which is pretty powerful, although it has its quirks, especially if using lots of third-party components, can be a little tricky. But the other is we've already introduced, of recent releases, 5 new VCL components that basically help in 2 different directions. One is the UI side, like the calendar or the track bar, but the other is the UI design, so the way you organize and structure an application. And those are both quite interesting, and the reason they kind of are in common is that when WinRT came along, at the WinRT level, it has low-level services, but WinRT has its own UI model on top of it. And the set of UI components in WinRT is actually quite nice compared to the good old classic Windows component. Again, not just because they have different UI, but also the application logic is different. So what we decided, okay, there are actually some nice idea. Let's clone them in VCL. So these new components provide you the behavior or the look and feel of a WinRT application, but they're fully re-implemented on the VCL, so they run on Windows 7. Because one of the problems, say, oh yeah, WinRT is the new world, why don't do it the Microsoft way and build a WinRT application? You know what? They will never run on Windows 7. And I guess you still have customers on Windows 7. So it's not ideal to say, I have an application, it's great, but it really runs only on Windows 10. Maybe you are in a position to do that, but for most of the developers, that's not really a reasonable position, requiring Windows 10. So the idea was to try to do that and keep the best of both worlds. So this is an example of styling. We'll do some of the styling there in a bit. But styles can be really comprehensive. We're shipping 20 styles, and our guys like building additional styles on top of it. And then we've created all of these new components. This is like the modern world of the hourglass. Hourglass is really old-fashioned. So we have this activity indicator. It's an hourglass, but it's a different graphic. Or this one is going to demo because otherwise it's tricky. This is a component that has only kind of a UI-related model and not much of an architectural model rather than a strictly a UI element. But I think it's a great component. So what's the point of a relative panel? The point of a relative panel is to introduce a new coordinate system for your control. So in general, in Delphi, the coordinates are absolute, so position relative to the top corner. However, you can use anchoring, so the position becomes related with, position is absolute, but they change depending on the top, bottom, left, or right. Or you can use alignment to have all of this panel within panel within panel and create all of this fancy UI that adapts, but that's a lot of work. This panel introduces a new model, and it's called relative panel because the position of a component depends on the position of another component, which is quite nice. So suppose you have an edit And actually, I could create new controls using quick editors, add control, label, okay. And then I want to do add control button. That's faster than going the other way. So suppose that you want to put this label on top of the edit. So what if you do the relative panel? Oh, wait. It's got behind. Gosh. Into. Okay, that's better. So what you can do, I mean, what's happening here is that like it happens with any container panel that has add-on properties, technically there is a control that has a collection of items. These items have additional properties, and then the items contain the actual controls. It's like 2 layers. Given that those internal items are not in the object inspector, the properties are folded into. So when you place a label into a relative panel, you add this. The label not working. Okay, it is. You have these other like 20 additional properties that you can use to fine-tune like in a million ways the label behavior. And so there are 2 sets. Some are Boolean, how it behaves, mostly alignment with the host, alignment with the parent, how it is centered, or how it behaves compared to the host panel. And then this other set, which is the relative thing. So for example, I want this to be above the edit. Not only, but I want to be left aligned with the edit, aligned left with, it's quite readable, aligned left with edit. That's it. So now, and that's not a static one-time thing. It moves, even in runtime. If you're moving the edit at runtime because the screen is smaller, bigger, whatever, it will keep those things around. And now the button I want to put on the side of the edit, so I want the button to be aligned horizontal center with the edit and be right of the edit. Oh, I did it wrong.
I think you've got to get rid of that first one.
So Marco, this relative panel thing is in addition to the old panels?
Yeah. It's a T panel. It's a custom T panel that has a bunch of. What did I do wrong? Oh, horizontal center. Yeah, sorry. Should have done vertical center. Okay, that's what I want. And then say, hey, this is too close. Okay, sure. All of these components have margins. So I can go into the margins and wait, I need to first align with the margins. Alright, getting 3 pixels, but then I can customize it and put whatever number here. Let's see. Yeah, sorry, that. So you can use margins, alignments, and then you can have like another, you have another button that's below that button. You can really create a lot of these complex relationships. You can create them at runtime in code. There's nothing that prevents you to do that in code. Just those properties are not on the component, are on this container, there are items within the components. And actually, as someone suggested yesterday, it shows up if you do your S4, your stacks, because the relative panel contains this collection of items, and each item is a host of a control, and then it has the additional property. So this same code you can do at runtime easily. Okay, so that's a pretty powerful control in terms of building your UI in a dynamic fashion. And again, and the reason is that today, compared to the past, today we have more difference in the screen estate. You can have very small laptops, huge screen, so creating UIs that are flexible is more difficult than it was in the past.
So, this only works back to Windows 7, it doesn't work back to Windows 7.
This works with Windows 95 XP. It's VCL, it's 100% VCL code, so there's nothing.
So it basically depends on the old API.
Yeah. It's all Windows API, it's all VCL code, there's nothing in terms of WinRT dependency. So it works across any version of Windows you can target. I'm pretty sure this would theoretically go back quite a few versions.
Is there a bi-monkey equivalent?
Not exactly. Not exactly. No, it's something we're considering moving over to FireMonkey because there isn't exactly something like this. Okay, and then on top of this, this still looks oldish. On top of this, we can go here and go to the appearance, say, hey, I want Luna. I don't even know how that looks like. Let's find out. Luna style application. Then you run it and it looks marvelous, ugly, depends on the time. But it looks modern looking UI stuff. Really with touch.
Okay. This isn't exactly on the same subject, but it's related. There's been a few changes in later versions of Windows 8 through 10 where some of the old stuff gets broken because of, the drop-down list, for instance, will automatically drop to 32 items because of what they've done inside the feed. And you've got to do a patch over it, which is doable. Now, if you fix that in this sort of stuff?
No.
I'm sure there's more of that sort of shit.
Yeah, no. I mean, the drawback, there are two drawbacks of styling. One is you lose some performance, honestly, compared to like pure Windows. But that's reasonable price to pay on average. It depends on the application. And the other thing, that there are a few bugs in styling, although we're really doing our best to fix them.
No, it's not your bugs, it's the ones created by Microsoft.
Oh, okay.
All late model, all applications actually, which is a bit of a pain in the ass. You've got to go back and you've got to put those API calls.
Okay.
Just fix it with a kludgy API call here and there.
Okay. No, so that's different. That's it. I mean, formally we don't support anything older than Windows 7 these days, but then in practice most applications still work on Windows XP. But it's tricky, and Microsoft is annoyingly breaking APIs, which I'm not sure. I mean, Microsoft has been moving from we release Windows every 5 years, which was a little slow, and then to keep up with Apple, Google, and everyone else, they're going to releasing Windows every 4 months. This is what we're going to. I mean, if we just released it, saying like in September, October, it's a new one. But by doing that, their quality is worrisome. I mean, they broke one control, a Windows platform control in Creators Update. They also broke other stuff, stumbling with. They even released an internal build that had like one of the core threading APIs broken. So like for 2 weeks they didn't want to start on the latest build of Windows. But they broke badly like a core API. It's like, it's not the Microsoft we knew. I mean, yeah, they can move a little faster, but if that's the fact, I slow down on it. Keep it stable. Yep.
Be careful because you've got major and minor builds with Windows. You've got enterprise versions which are actually supported by Microsoft that go for 10 years. And the minor builds.
No. I mean, the internal builds is, if you use them, it's your responsibility. Still, I mean, breaking like a core API, even in an internal beta build, that's unheard of from Microsoft. That's not what I'm saying.
Oh, that's not totally true. I mean, they've got major and minor builds, and when they do their major and minor builds, the major builds they release out to.
That's true. Yeah, right. But again, they broke one of the edit pickers in Creators Update, so that's a public risk.
They tend not to break those. The major builds that are put through.
Okay, that's a fair point. But I mean, the point was, making the development faster can have drawbacks in terms of the overall stability, which is a trade-off. I mean, I understand the point, but it's putting developers in a weak spot because you really need to test everything on every release aggressively.
The reality is, if you test against the major builds, you're generally going to get a guaranteed version.
We can discuss that later. Anyway, so that was the relative panel, which is a pretty good one. There is a search box, which is kind of an edit, but it has this like search items, kind of behaves a little like a search box. Split view is another nice component. I'm going to show you an existing demo of this one. Again, this is a more of an architectural than the specific control type of API. Windows. So again, it's better to run it than to try to explain it. So this is a split view. It introduced this control with the related hamburger menu. How it's called. So it's just kind of a menu thing that goes on top, but it has a specific behavior. You can use it that way. You can use it as overlay, so it goes on top of the window, and then you can compact it rather than collapse it. So it never goes away, but it removes the label portion, and you keep on the item. And of course, you can change the animation, the delay. Yeah, it works on multiple different styles. This is the dark window style. You can put it on the right and the left. And there are a bunch of projects. But kind of overall idea is this type of menu with the hamburger menu on top of it, and this type of behavior. This is a UI style that Windows is cloning from the mobile world. So the mobile is influencing heavily the Windows UI. That's like a very specific example. But again, it doesn't take, if you have an existing, basically the size is just a panel. So if you have already a bunch of panels, maybe on a tab, you can remove the tabs, drop in this component. Your code will not change much, but you get this type of look and feel and behavior, which is markedly more modern than having the tabs or some other control item. So it's fairly smooth to move to this model from your existing application. And yeah, why not? Yep.
High resolution screens.
Support for high resolution is always tricky. We've made some good progress. There are still components that are not, controls that are not there. Overall, the VCL has a decent support for high DPI screen. It has support for multiple. So like when you have a form, you move it from one screen to another, it does change the pixel range resolution on the fly dynamically and readapts. So some of the things are working. It's fairly tricky because it's tricky in itself and that VCL code is fairly old. But also because Microsoft has changed the high DPI logic from Windows 10 to Windows 10 Anniversary to Windows 10 Creator in significant ways. So we could do a better job, but it's not trivial. Because again, the API logic has changed a bit among Windows 10 versions. So that makes things, of course, from Windows 7, there's a bunch of new APIs that were not there, like the per monitor, the pixel resolution, and other things like that. So I think we're not far from a very good solution, but it's still not perfect. Then there are other things like the images, like our images don't scale, so there are other things that we could address. But again, the problem to address that, you have to go away from the native Win API, the native Windows controls and objects, because the native controls and objects don't support some of those features that you would need. So it's kind of tricky, but it's something we have like, I don't know, 30 more issues that we want to fix in update 1 of Tokyo related with high DPI. So, like everything's been reported against it in one fix. So that's what we're trying to do. Okay, split view. How am I doing about time? Okay. Switch. Switch is the modern style checkbox. It just looks like a switch, but it's a checkbox. Again, it's fine. But again, you don't have to like redo your application with a new technology if you want to use a switch. You just remove the checkbox, put the switch, change the code a bit because the property name is different. That's it. Really, really relatively short to make the change. Calendar control, that's the one we've introduced in Berlin Update 2. It's actually pretty smooth because it has, I mean, the UI behavior is actually fairly complex. Sure, I can make it. So if I drop a calendar, there is a view. The picture is just the combo box version. If I drop a calendar and run it, you see this is the date. You can pick a date. There is multiple selections of those options. Then you can pick a month. You can drill into another month, or you can pick a year, and then you see the decade. And you can move among the decades, and then you can pick a month and a year. So this is exactly the UI and the animation type you get on the WinRT control. There's nothing like this on Win32. And again, but this is a native VCL control, so we work across more continuous set.
So you can do a multiple selection for booking, for instance?
It's possible to have multiple selections, both consecutive, like a range, or separate multiple selections.
Completely separate, so
You can also do, yeah, at that point you might want to do custom painting. You can custom paint. There's an on paint for each cell, so you can say, I don't know, I want this selection to be red because like from the beginning to end. You can, it's fairly flexible in terms of custom painting, customization, and behavior. In fact, it has a few events, but it has a draw day, draw month, draw year, specific method, and then a bunch of properties and settings. You can really, like first day of the week, the year, you can have a predefined range of dates you can get through, like only this year. I don't know. It's fairly powerful. Again, I think we clone each and every property. Yes?
What's the name of the control?
Sorry?
What's the name of the control?
It's called Calendar View.
Calendar View.
And there is another one, it's Calendar Picker, which is the same, but it's a combo, and then it drops down, and you get a calendar. But it shows like a line item of the date. Okay, let me go ahead. I have a few things to go through. WinRT. So what's nice about WinRT, I mean, when we started looking into it, say, oh, there's a whole new API under Windows. Oh, it's going to be tricky. Officially, it hasn't got any specific binding for like old style Win API applications. Microsoft's initially, now they are providing some documentation. Initially, had very little documentation how to integrate it with Win API. But it turns out that I mean, first, and that's important, WinRT is a native layer. So WinRT is written in C, C++, and it's natively compiled code. It's not .NET code. So .NET is a layer on top of Win32 or on top of WinRT. But when .NET talks to WinRT, it does marshalling. It goes from managed to native and back. When we talk to WinRT, we're doing native to native. It's just a function call. Nothing else happening. Exactly like calling COM or calling a Win32 API. So these are all native layers, which means it's fast call and it's pretty direct. Now it turns out WinRT uses the same vtables of COM, which are the same vtables we're using for interfaces. So you know what? You take an interface with the right parameters and you can talk to WinRT. So the WinRT mapping is done through a Delphi interface and it's a perfect match. We didn't have to change much internally. What we had to do is create the interface for all these objects. So we wrote some tools, like a million. But in terms of the model, I mean the direct call, because what you call is calling those methods, the direct call is exactly a vtable call through an interface. So that makes it fairly smooth and fairly well integrated into the Delphi logic, because you don't have to do anything special. You declare an interface. The trick is, well, get the right object behind the interface, or the right references, but then it's done. You just call it. So it's fairly smooth. Now, the issue is that it is COM-based, but it does not use the COM type system. So there's no vtable, there's no import, there's no way to know from some metadata the structure. You have to read it, the header files and convert that manually or automatically if you have a tool. But that's the problem. Also, the types are different, meaning, for example, well, integers and floating points, yeah. But objects are different, interfaces are different, and strings are different. So there's a distinct string type that we support. So we have our own helper class, helper record actually to handle that. It's done. Last thing, the objects, I mean, COM has a specific model for creating, destroying objects through the class factory. Is you have to use a meta, and you have to ask the server to create a class on your behalf. It's a fairly complex structure. WinRT is much easier, and also you don't have to, I mean, global objects are not in the registry. You refer to global object by string. So you have a unique string in the system that means I want an object with this name, and you get it. Which is kind of weird, but it's actually an advantage because you don't have the registration of that stuff. That's typical of the COM land. That can get a bit in the way. So this is what we are doing. We have helpers to simplify the creation of objects. We don't have the entire WinRT APIs. We're still a little behind, but we're going to get there. But we still have over 40 WinAPI units. This is the type used for strings, the Windows string, for the lack of a better name. Technically, it's called hstring at the Windows level. And again, the code you need to interface is much smaller than Microsoft Platform's code, which is not bad. This is the list of the units, and each of these has a bunch of interfaces and classes and helpers and other stuff, so whatever. I mean, most of these you don't care about and you don't want to use, but a bunch are useful, so there's several that are pretty nice. Low-level calls. It's reference, interfaces, so it does the automatic reference counting to interfaces. Again, there's this helper. There's this unit with helper stuff, which is system with WinRT. We generate a dot factory and a dot statics kind of class references to call constructors and to call other global methods. Just our own way of exposing. And the rest is interfaces. So the factory used for creating objects at times, not the only way. So let's look at some code here. That's getting interesting. Okay, so what I've done here, of course, it's a very sophisticated UI, as you can see. What this does is do something you can do by dropping a component. So we support notification through the T-notification component. So you don't have to do the low-level stuff. But as an example of doing the low-level calls, I've extracted some of the key pieces and created the manual code for that. Okay, so that's kind of it. And like this, it doesn't look too bad, although there is some boilerplate code as well. Is it big enough in the back, or can you read it? Can make it bigger. Let's do that. One of the greatest features we had recently in Delphi is increased font size. The only problem is mapped to a key that doesn't exist, a physical key that doesn't exist on the Mac. So I can need to use the menu for Mac. Is it better? Okay. But now it doesn't fit. Let me get this to smaller. Okay. So I'm going to the core steps, and then we get some of the details. So the core steps are basically two. First, we create a toast or message, if you want to call it that way, which is we're just implementing iToast notification. This is a WinRT API. So this is a direct example. We want to use this toast notification, which is an object in WinRT, and we also want to use a second object that is called toast notifier, because what you have to do is to create a notifier and then use the notifier to present or show a notification. So you need two WinRT objects that interact. One is the notification, one is the notifier that sends the notification, whatever. That's how it works. Okay, so we are using two WinRT objects in a combined fashion, and we're using it in a slightly different way, but not that much. So here, as you see, we're using the factory model for creating a notification. What you need to pass to this is a bunch of XML, which has the structure of the notification. And for building it, I'm using a helper class that's a Delphi class. It's called T-notification. You put in all of your fields, and then it does create the XML for you. Otherwise, it's really a lot of boring, very boring and complex code. But again, the point is here. No. Now, what is LToast and what is this factory? We can actually drill into the code a bit. So the iToast notification is an interface. Again, it's a WinRT interface. So it's declaring one of these unit PI/UI notifications. And this is the class itself. It has a bunch of fields, and it just read and write those. I mean, it's all in content. It's all a bunch of properties. There isn't behavior really here. So there's content expiration. This add items handlers. This is how you define event handlers. You define event handlers not with a callback, but creating an object. You pass an object with a virtual method. It's kind of the Java way of doing delegates. Whatever. So you create an object with a virtual method, and then you pass that object. The virtual method is called when there is the event file. So it's again slightly different model than what we're used to, but nothing too crazy. Again, so this, I know a couple of things here. It inherits from a given interface. It's kind of a standard high-level interface. And the other thing here, this is decorated with an attribute, which is actually absolutely critical because it manages the creation of the object. And this notification is the unique name for this WinRT class. So that's how you refer globally to a class, with these long names. Okay. Now if we get back here, we're not creating, I mean, the way to create an object, we're using this helper, and this helper is just a fairly simple helper, although you'll hear we started using, I mean, not putting us up, I mean, this is inherits from a generic version that's tied to a specific import factory that's tied to a specific interface. So the code is fairly tricky, but basically this has one constructor which is created using the XML. And returns the new object. Okay? But different things have different constructors. So here instead, this manager, I mean the interface is similar. If we look at toast notifier, it's another interface like that. Very similar in logic. Although this has more methods, more behavior than status, but yeah, that's what it is. So it's the same pattern, as you can see. And then the creation is slightly different because what we're doing, in fact, is using the statics of the manager. So it's a slightly different model, but this class functions you can use to create things in this case. So it goes to creating this, calling this function. Again, these functions are okay, yeah, it refers to calling statics. So it's just, this is just, I could have used this helper compared to going to statics. But the statics is just, oh, it's there. It's not going to resolve it. It's just a helper that's generated automatically to refer to the internal creation. Again, this last thing I want to show you is the delegate. So the delegate is a class I've created here. So it has to be inspectable, typed event handler, inspectable, whatever this is. So it has to implement an interface that has the callback. So mostly you have to implement one method called invoke. So when this method is invoked, this is the code. Code is fairly simple. It doesn't show message. But this code with some boilerplate that I'm skipping, when you run it, then you click the button, you get the notification, click on the notification, get the show message. So it's the entire cycle and loop from yourself to the system back. Yes?
Are you dealing with the timing out issues of asynchronous with that with the notification area?
It's executed in the main in the UI thread,
Yeah.
so it's not really asynchronous. I think it sends a message into the main thread. If I remember it right, not sure, but that's what I think happens. Okay, so that's I think what again we have ready-to-use components. Actually, 2 share contracts and notifications that are ready to use. We are also implementing Bluetooth LE on top of WinRT. There is no Bluetooth LE in Win32. It's only in WinRT. So we have 3 components that you just drop into that end up calling WinRT APIs. Okay, last thing I want to cover, okay, should be good with time, is the extra bridge. Now I get to why this is a big deal a little more at the end, but it is a big deal. I mean, since Microsoft started pushing the idea of the store and distributing applications and all of that stuff, VCL applications have been a second, if not third-class citizen in that world. It had to be certified, had to be this, had to be that, had to be .NET, had to be something, had to be WinRT. Using this Centennial bridge, you can reach the ultimate goal of using the store to distribute your VCL and FireMonkey applications. This is not a small thing. I mean, the store distribution means that you can get your application in the hands of 500 million Windows users with no effort on your side. 0 cost, it's not bad. No hosting, no downloads, no bandwidth, no nothing. You put it there, you promote it somehow, spending 20 million, I don't know, to get people aware, that's another side, but everyone can download it and get them on their PC. And if there is an update, you just shoot up the update, hey, there's an update, automatic update, pop on, they get the update on their computer. So it removes the entire installation, distribution stuff, and even part of the marketing, because I mean, someone searching on the store will find your application there. So it's a big thing. And if you're followed, if you're doing anything on the mobile space, I mean, store distribution has been a game changer for the industry. And the fact that Microsoft is heavily pushing on store distribution because they want to be part of this new world where applications get to the people through a store. There are security considerations, there are a bunch of things. Of course, ultimately it's controlling the platform and making some money from Apple, Google, and Microsoft. Anyway, but as developers, the fact that your application can get in the hands of so many people so easily is unprecedented. I mean, in the past, I mean, I had small applications on my website, people download it, you get like 100 people download it over a few months because I'm promoting on my blog, hey, there's this nice app. The first time I got an app on the store, in a few months, it was reaching tens of thousands of people. And over 2 years, got a 250,000 downloads. I mean, when your application got a 250,000 downloads. And I did zero marketing, zero anything, just put that up, was a toy thing, not even a business thing, so whatever happened, with doing nothing. So, wow. I mean, the power of the store distribution is really critical. So it's important. And again, Delphi application can play fairly smoothly in this world. The only thing you have to do is you can distribute the application as is, you can distribute an UpX. So the UpX is the application that's going to be installed, distributed through the store, and also you can do ad hoc distribution in enterprise environments and blah, blah, blah. What's an UpX? It's a zip file. Yeah, it's good old stuff. It's a zip file with a sub-file system. So you can have like the executable, DLLs, packages, database drivers, a bunch of files, configuration files, database files, images, whatever. You put them in a small file system, and that gets chunked into the UpX and gets distributed out. It's pretty smooth and easy to do. Okay. You can build an UpX using installers. You can build an UpX. An UpX we use for the desktop bridge using installers. There is a special conversion tool from Microsoft. Don't even try using that; it's a total mess. Or you can do it manually. It's basically 3 calls you have to do. It's not that big of a deal. Or you can do exactly this same step. I mean, any of the major download sites have gone really like throwing stuff to your system that you don't want, which is really being, worsening the Windows experience. So the store is a way to say Windows as, okay, let's download something and get it on my system. So the store makes sense. It makes sense for the user, it makes sense for Microsoft. Honestly, it makes sense for the developer because you gain the distribution without having to go through this download size and other stuff. So it's positive for everyone. But Microsoft has to make it right, has a way to get rid of all of the crap that there is on the store, the demo apps. Because they want to get big numbers, they want to get as many as Android, so they're letting like everything in, including a lot of crap. And that doesn't help the store reputation. But I think that having the store is critical for the future of Windows. That's why, I personally pushed very strong to have store support in the IDE and have the entire experience. I've been talking with all of these Microsoft guys that do the Windows Bridge. Again, they supported us by, doing joint press releases with us. That's the first time ever Microsoft does a joint press release with Embarcadero, touting a feature of our IDE. Come on. So to me, that's critical because we want you to be successful on Windows, and if that's possible without rewriting everything to a new language environment and tool, just not because it's not our tool, because rewriting is like a crazy proposition. That's the best of both worlds. So again, that's what we're trying to do. And it's so late, we need to get to the coffee, so I'll be around the entire day for any further question and have another session beyond.